Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we've got a special guest. His name's Jerry Stalneker, and Jerry's got a huge list of accomplishment, and he seeks to help others answer one of the toughest questions we all face. How do I move forward with when my world's falling apart? He's the co-founder of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and he's dedicated to helping America's military warriors and their families who are suffering from the unseen wounds of combat, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. In addition to his current role, Jeremy has served as a Marine Corps infantry officer and senior pastor. He's an accomplished author, inspirational speaker, and a frequent guest on some of America's most prominent news networks. I'd say that sounds like a good chunk of credentials there. Welcome, Jeremy. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
You know, it's wild. Before we get started, I run a nonprofit called Gardens of Hope, and one of the things that we do is we offer whatever our services are free to veterans. And I didn't serve, and I feel that, I take the liberties that were provided for me by those who did. And, so it's kind of my way of saying, thanks. But it's been really weird. I've been trying to connect with veterans organizations for years, and bit by bit, I've got another Marine who's been helping me out, and I've got a number of friends who are veterans, but these organizations specifically just don't seem to want to grab my hand and let me help them. And
Yeah.
It's a crazy world. So, we don't need to get too deep into that, but it's an observation I've made.
Yeah. It's funny, I have conversations with a lot of nonprofits, and most of them are kind of in the same space we're in, the veteran or first responder nonprofit world. But it seems like we have these conversations a lot. Why don't we work together more? Why don't we facilitate, those areas where we have shortcomings? There are things we don't do that you do, and why don't we work together on these things?
Yeah.
It seems like when someone has a vision or a passion for particularly a nonprofit, they put their head down and they just move forward and they're doing their thing. And most nonprofit leaders that I know are happy that other people are doing other things.
Sure.
They're so time constrained and resource constrained that the thought of trying to work together is a little overwhelming sometimes. But that's definitely the path forward for sure.
I get it. Well, maybe, who knows, maybe we can find a way to connect a few dots along the way. So tell me about yourself a little bit, and love to hear about this Mighty Oaks Foundation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I served as an infantry officer, as you mentioned, with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, based out of Camp Pendleton, and did a number of things. In 2003, deployed to Kuwait, and then that would become Operation Iraqi Freedom. So in January 2003, we're in Kuwait. In March, we moved into Iraq. 1st Infantry Battalion, 1st Marine Infantry Battalion that went into the country was 1-5 was ours. And we made our way into the country, did our kind of that road march for people that remember that time, did that long road march to Baghdad.
Oh, yeah.
And on April 10th, 2003, the Battle of Baghdad was also our battalion. And that was our last major engagement. When that ended, and that was quite a fight, but when that ended, essentially for us, at the time at least, the war was over. We retrograded back home and made our way back to Camp Pendleton. And for me, I got home 30 days later. I left the Marine Corps. I was off active duty and went to work for a local church, which you mentioned. I was in ministry for a number of years and worked at that church in Oceanside for some time, and then pastored a church in the San Francisco area for about 7 years. And in all of that, had my own struggles, had my own challenges, of course, and worked through a lot of things that we're talking about today, but we weren't talking about in 2003.
All right.
And so a lot of the things that I dealt with, I thought were kind of unique to me. I thought that maybe I was broken or there was something wrong with me. And thankfully, I had good people step into my life and help me. But yeah, I wasn't looking outside of my situation. I was just trying to address my situation. And part of me being able to move forward was kind of stepping away from the people that I knew that had served and just moving on. About 10 years later, so about 10 years after I was out of the Marine Corps, I reconnected with several of the guys that I served with and realized that my issues were not unique to me, that a lot of people were struggling with the very same things, but many people who were struggling didn't have the opportunity to be as connected as I was to good people, to a great community, to those that could help me. And so that was the time Mighty Oaks was getting started. I met the founder, and he was, trying to get things moving, and said, "Hey, would you come and help?" And I did. And so that was in 2012. And we've been serving veterans, service members, and first responders since then. We have locations across the country. And last year had just over 1,000 people come through one of our week-long programs, which are held at various places across the country. And yeah, we've served nearly 8,000 people and continue to do our best to help people who are just like us and to support them in ways that help them to move forward as well.
So tell me a little bit about that. These are really sort of broad descriptors that you've been using, and I'd
Yeah.
like to know about, I we have garden therapy programs. So we've got this botanical garden, and the idea is you can come out here and work in the garden, be in the garden, pick food out of the garden, and all of those things are healing in their own right.
Yeah.
There are specific programs that we do. I'm curious, what specifically do you guys offer, and how does it work?
Yeah. So we are not a clinical program. And sometimes people hear program or something like that, and they think doctors and therapists and the rest of it, medication.
Right.
We're not any of those things. The people that we serve that come to our programs have access to all of those through either the VA or through their departments if they're in the first responder world. So we're not clinical. In fact, we would define ourselves as faith-based. And so that, again, you talk about broad, right? That's a very broad category of,
Yeah.
that could mean just about anything.
Sure.
And for us, what that means is we address issues like trauma and post-traumatic stress and a lot of these issues that men and women are dealing with from a faith perspective, meaning we believe there's a creator, and that if there is a creator, then there's design. And that's really important for one fundamental reason. If there's design, then there's hope. And so
Yeah.
many people on the other side of trauma and brokenness will say, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know who I am if I'm not in the military anymore. And if I don't know who I am, then I have no purpose. And if I have no purpose, then I have no hope. And it's this very dark path that many people walk. And so we start off with this premise. You were
Yeah.
created with purpose. You're here for a reason. And so we start to address trauma and post-traumatic stress and these issues by acknowledging that they're real struggles, and they have real implications in our lives, but quickly moving to an understanding that you don't have to be stuck there. You can move forward in spite of what's happened in your past, and you move into the life that you were created to live. And so again, that's pretty broad. Bringing it down, how do we communicate that? Every person who is a part of our program in terms of leadership, they teach classes, they lead breakouts, they all started as students.
Okay.
So we have an environment in these sessions, and they're a week long, so everyone's together for 5 days. There's an environment there where everyone in the room has a similar background, maybe not exactly the same, but similar.
Mhm.
So the barriers come down quickly. That barrier that says you don't know where I am or who
Right.
I am, what I've been through, comes down very quickly because everyone there has a similar background. And the people standing in front of the class and teaching, we require them to tell their story before they teach whatever the class is.
Okay.
So for the first 15 minutes of a 60-minute class, they're telling their story. And it's very much, I know where you are because I was sitting in that spot right there. And I was
Right.
struggling in a lot of the same ways that you're struggling. And I still don't have it all figured out. But I'm moving forward. My marriage is better than it was. We're putting the pieces together. We've gotten counseling, whatever that is. Or, struggling with substance abuse, or I attempted to take my life. So they're very transparent about their story. And in doing that, they communicate to the people who are there is hope. Others have gone down this road before you. You're not alone. You're not the only one. And on the other side of your brokenness and your trauma and your hurt, you can move forward. So let's figure out why we're here, and let's figure out what you were created to accomplish. And that's really what we spend 5 days on. On the other side of that 5 days, so hopefully people make a good decision during that time they're with us to get up, to move forward, to address whatever's in their past so they can move forward. But 5 days isn't very long. So on the other side of that, we have a very long aftercare program, which is folks on our team staying in touch with our graduates and then connecting them to those other resources, counseling or substance abuse programs, or whatever else they need. They've made a decision to go forward, but now they need help. We connect them to the resources that can help them. So it's very, very simple, but it's powerful. And I think for a lot of reasons, but I think the most powerful thing about it, probably in addition to just acknowledging faith and addressing it from a faith perspective, is that there's real transparency from
Right.
those who are teaching the classes. And so it takes away every excuse. And it does give hope when you know other people have also struggled and found a way forward.
Absolutely. What do you think that I'm sure there's ways you measure success, but just the percentage of people that move forward.
Yeah. It's hard to know exactly because over time, you know, things change, people go back. We said for years that our measure of success was that we had not had a graduate of our program take their life. The veteran suicide issue is huge.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the people that attend our programs have either attempted suicide or talked about it. Almost 15 years later, that's not true. We have had some of our graduates that have taken their lives. It's been, a very small number. So that's one area we look at. And I won't say it's anecdotal. It's probably not, measurable in a scientific way. But
Sure.
people that come to us and they say things like, if this week doesn't work, then on Saturday, I'm going to end my life because I have nowhere else to go. That
Uh,
happens a lot. And 99.9% of the time, hope is found and that doesn't happen. And so that's one measure of success. We have surveys that we take after the program and then 6 months after the program. And we have better than 80% of people say they're better than they were before the program. And so we try to measure that as well. But really for us, it's just trying to stay in contact with as many of our graduates as possible, knowing that as long as we're in contact with them, we can steer them in the right direction and they have the support that they need.
nice. I, I I can respect that. I work with a number of different groups and programs, or have interviewed a lot of people that are, trauma is a big thing in all
Yeah.
elements
Yeah.
of life. And I'm understanding that more and more as I'm, meeting more people, interviewing more people, and working with more people. And
Yeah.
to have something that cares enough about the clients that you're working to stay with, that's an indication of a worthy program. So I give some respect for that.
Well, it's hard to tell people that they're okay now. They've spent a year, 10 years, 15 years doing everything they could to hurt themselves and their relationships and the rest of it. And in a week, we're going to fix them. It's not even realistic, right? And so if we're not committed to walking that out with them on the other side, then really we're wasting their time and ours probably.
Well, and you look for some measure of success. As you're going from here to there, we've seldom
Yeah.
accomplished
Yeah.
everything we set out to, but at least we try to hit some kind of a milestone or some kind of a victory that you can say, okay, well,
Yeah. That's right.
we, there's there's this place from here to there that we're going, but
Yeah.
at least if we went forward and not backward, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah. That's right. That's it. Yeah.
So tell me about March or Die. That shows up here in your notes
Yeah.
a number of times.
Yeah. So March or Die is the name of the podcast that I have. So I have a podcast, a weekly podcast called March or Die. I wrote a book called March or Die, and that was about my time, our time in Iraq, lessons learned. So it was specific events that took place while we were there, and then lessons that were extracted from that I hope will help people. But that phrase and kind of the story around that comes from a specific incident in Iraq. Our battalion was sent to secure a bridge, and that's not unusual. But what was unusual this day is there was a large enemy force there. When we got there, they weren't supposed to be there. So we got ambushed going to do our job to secure this bridge. And man, a number of things happened, but I found myself on top of the bridge in a situation where things were going from bad to worse. And I think we can all relate to that, right? You find yourself
Sure.
in a situation where things go from bad to worse, and something had to be done. And I didn't know what to do, but in that moment, you have this. It's funny what you think about when you're stressed out as much as you could possibly be, right? I was a part of another unit in the Marine Corps that had a motto. So every unit in the military has a motto of some kind, and the motto was "March or Die." And I like it because it's real simple, right? It's like you move forward or you stay where you are and die. Those are the only two options. It's not complicated.
Right.
Well, that day on that bridge, that was it. We either were going to stay there and die, or we were going to get off the bridge and figure out what to do next. We didn't know where we were going to end up or how this was all going to resolve, but we knew we couldn't stay where we are or we would die. And so you have to march. And that has really become kind of I don't know, a phrase that guides a lot of how I think and how I see the world. Because so often as we go through life, we encounter obstacles and difficulties. Sometimes it's the traumas of our past that are pulling us back. We have these things in our life, we'll call them an enemy, that work to prevent forward movement. And really, if you're not moving forward, then effectively you're dead. There are a lot of people that are still alive, they're still breathing air, but they're not accomplishing anything. They're dead, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, dead. and
It's such
and
a
the
truth. What you just said there is, paramount in so many different avenues, so many different topics. It's universal. And
yeah,
you're either moving forward or you're moving backward. And there's no sitting still anywhere.
that's right. And that's a decision that you have to make. And in some people, they fall into this victim mentality where it's just like, well, this is where I am. And the principle of march or die that I communicate and that I talk about is you get to decide. Are you going to stay where you are and die? You can make that decision. You can give up. You can do that. But make no mistake, it's a decision. No one can force you to quit. Are you going to do that? Or are you just going to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward? You don't have to know where you're going. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be able to see the end from here. You just need to take the next step. And so as my podcast and the book and other places, that's what I talked about is how do we move forward? How do we march when it'd be easier to stay where we are and die?
Yeah, that's something I've run into a lot. I'm just recently overcame a really aggressive cancer, and it was my will
Wow.
to live that was pushing me through this whole thing. And I did a lot of very difficult things and made some hard choices. And through
Yeah,
that, I've tried to help other people with what I've learned. And I find so many people are not willing to do that work.
that's right.
And they
That's
just
exactly
go,
right.
I don't know, it's too much. And I'm like, how do you think
Yeah.
like that? How do
Yeah.
you reckon with people that, you know, clearly you have a purpose and vision and will to live, and you've taken yourself from whatever difficulties you've spent to somebody who's helping others. But when you run into somebody who is ready to just kind of let go and drift away,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, man, it depends on the person, I guess, is the short answer. And it has to begin with understanding that where you are is not where you need to be. This isn't a predetermined course for your life or whatever. That's where we become victims. We say, I have zero control over this. One of the statements that I make often is you may not get to pick the fight, but you always get to decide how you're going to fight.
Yeah,
So you may find yourself in a situation you didn't anticipate, a health issue,
sure.
a financial issue, a relationship issue. I mean, go down the list. You may find yourself in a situation you didn't put yourself into, you didn't ask for, it's not your fault, but here you are.
Right,
So whether you decided to be there or not is not really the issue. It's a question of what do you do next. And
right.
a phrase with that I use is how you got here is far less important than what you do next.
Yes,
And so people they have regret and they have fear and they have all of these things, and you have to help them understand that out in front of you is something great. I don't know what that is, but let's go figure it out. And then often what people need to recognize is it is, and that's why I use the word march. It's intentional. It's one step at a time.
literally.
It's take the next step and
Yeah,
take the one after that and take the one after that. What overwhelms people is I'm in a really bad spot and I have no idea how to get to the other side of it. You don't have to. Take the next step. Financially, I'm in a hole and I have no idea how I'll ever be financially secure again. Look, let's just start one step at a time.
Right.
Let's figure out what the problem is right now. Let's deal with that. And then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. Relationships, health issues, all of it. It is one step at a time. And so it's helping people understand you're not a victim. This may be where you are, but you have the power to take the next step. You don't have to see the end from here, but let's just start marching. And then often it's getting people together that can support one another and encourage one another, because we all feel alone. We all feel like we're the only ones that have ever dealt with whatever we're dealing with. So yeah, it's a process.
Through that, I hear, pieces of, ownership and accountability. I think that's critical in everybody's problems. You talk about victim mentality and all of that. And how do you address, the really, we're the ones who decide what we do. We're the ones who caused where we are in some way, shape, or form. And we're the ones who have to forgive ourselves and pick ourselves up and take that first step. How do you deal with that when you've got people who have been through such difficult challenges? I know you've been through them as well, but you know how overwhelming they are. I've been fortunate in my life. I haven't had to go through some of the things that I know you guys have been through. And I've had people tell me about some things that they've been through that I just go, wow, I don't know how I would deal with that and own.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Well, again, it depends on the person. I mean, it's everything from just trying to be super motivating, right? Like we just need to motivate you out of this situation. Sometimes it's challenging people out of their situation. We'll say something like, if what you're doing isn't working, why not just try something different?
Yeah.
So I'm not asking you to make a lifelong commitment. I'm just asking you to try something different, and then we'll lay out what that looks like for you. We'll lay out the steps forward. But you have to decide. Belief precedes action. Belief precedes action, and you have to believe this is what can help me get out of this mess. And then I will begin to put the action steps in place that get me there. There are people, those unique people, who can do the action without the belief, hoping that the belief will come along. But for most people, belief precedes action. And so sometimes it's challenging people. Hey, what you're doing clearly hasn't been working. You're not happy with that, or you wouldn't be here. So let's try something different. Just give me some time, try something different, and let's see if we can get somewhere else. Sometimes people just need to be encouraged and motivated. Some need to see that example. That's why we have our instructors stand up and tell their story so they can find hope in someone else. I believe the lie that I can never get out of this situation that I'm in. And then I hear someone tell me a story similar to mine that illustrates to me that I can get out of this situation because they did it. And if they can do it, then I can do it.
Sure.
So often it's that. There are conversations around those pressure points. Look, if you don't figure out how to move forward, then you're going to lose your family. If you don't figure out how to move forward, then you're going to lose your life. So we can talk about that. For us, foundationally, again, faith is important. And so it's really asking the question, do you believe you were created for more than this?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, then let us help you take the steps you need to take to really lean into that and to walk out that faith and walk out the life that you were created to live. So it's different for everyone. the hook that gets people is different. And we throw all of them at them and
Sure.
try to just hope and pray that one of those things will get them. And it typically does. Being with other people is very, very helpful.
Mhm.
You don't feel like you're sitting in a room by yourself because you're with other people that get it. And
Agreed.
that's very empowering as well.
So your role in the Mighty Oaks Foundation, what things do you do? Are you still an instructor? Are you just working with the leaders, or what's
Yeah,
your?
I mean, a couple times a year I'll instruct in the program. That's not my primary anymore. I run the organization, so it's really setting direction and making sure we're staying true to our mission across our organization. I represent Mighty Oaks to other organizations, whether it's a conference or a church that has us come. Sometimes we'll speak to military units and talk about what we do. And so often I'll do that as well. So representing Mighty Oaks to other people outside of the organization. Yeah, back in the early days, I taught every session and most of the classes, but
Mhm.
now I don't do a whole lot of that. Now I'm trying to equip other people who are better at it than I was to be able to have the freedom and the liberty to do what they need to do.
How many instructors would you say, more or less, that you're dealing with right now?
Yeah, we have over 100 instructors. I don't know what the exact number is, 106 or 7
Nice.
across the country. This last year, so what year are we in? We're in 26, 25. We had 43 weeks of sessions. So every week we basically have a different session going on. They're each 5 days. So that's a new session just about every week. So yeah, a lot of things happening that requires a lot of manpower. Those are our instructors. We have a pretty large staff based out of the Houston, Texas area. So
Okay.
a lot of things going on all the time. And what's interesting is because our instructors started as students, right? They've grown and they've experienced some healing and good things are happening in their lives. And now they're teaching. That's great. That's what we want. But then as they continue to grow, they move on and they should move on, but they do move on. And so, whatever's happening is they're healing and getting better. They're moving on in their lives. So we're constantly experiencing that turnover and
Mhm.
training folks to come up, which is good. It's a good problem to have, but it's been pretty interesting over the years.
So do you operate like with different chapters, or you just have one central organization and you offer your classes in different areas?
Yeah, that's it. We have one organization. We administrate all of it from one place.
Mhm.
And but we have five, think ranch or conference center.
Okay.
I always say facility and people think like hospital. It's not. It's ranches, it's
Okay.
conference centers, beautiful locations. No one's locked down or anything. They can come and go as they want to. Most of
Nice.
them won't because they're there for 5 days, and we have partnerships with most of those so that we don't own those. We have relationships with the people that do.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been pretty interesting, but it's great. It's great to do it that way. I think it gets us. We're in California, Texas, Ohio, and Virginia, so we're all over the country, and
Yeah.
that gives a lot of people access to what we do.
Nice. So I suspect, I mean, you've been doing this now for more than 12 years. I suspect you've got a lot of stories about people that, you've interacted with or have participated in some of your programs. But I always like to hear at least one good anecdote about, somebody that you really
Yeah,
impacted.
yeah. This is a yeah. I'll tell you a story, and it's one that I share a lot, but it's kind of representative of a lot of people that come to our program.
Mhm.
So many of the men and women that attend our programs are proven leaders, and many of them are proven combat leaders. And so they've been in very difficult situations. They've led well, and then they transition out of the military. The bottom kind of falls out. Who am I if I'm not putting on that uniform every day? And then one bad decision leads to another. And that represents a lot of the people that attend our program. So we had one specific retired Marine. He was an E9, so he went as far as he could as a Marine. I think he was in for almost 30 years and had
Wow.
done everything. And if you looked at his resume, you're like, this is the guy, And throughout the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, he had served most of his time in combat roles or combat leadership roles. And so, very accomplished leader. And then left the Marine Corps. And after he retired, just like happens to a lot of people, the bottom fell out. He lost his identity. Who am I if I'm not leading Marines, if I'm not doing the things? started making bad decisions. And it's important to note that a lot of people who come to us or who talk about the problems with PTSD and that the trauma is a thing, but it's the bad decisions on the other side of the thing that cause the problems, right? And
Right.
so this guy that I'm talking about made a lot of bad decisions, and over the course of a couple of years became very, very depressed. And he was married, had a wife that loved him, but yeah, it was just further and further isolating to the point that eventually his wife lost track of him for a couple of weeks. He went away,
Wow.
didn't come back. She was trying to find him. And I think they were separated, or he was gone for about 2 weeks. She finally found him. He was in a hotel, and he was in a hotel room on the sixth floor of this hotel building. She knew he was in there. He'd answer her through the door, but wouldn't open the door. She got the manager, and the manager opened the door for her. And I've heard her tell this story. When she opened the door, hotel room, right? So open the door.
Yeah.
You could see the window on the other side of the hotel room for where she was standing in the doorway, and he had the window open, and he said goodbye to her and turned around and jumped out the window. So
Oh,
6 stories, and only by the providence and grace of God, some might call it a coincidence, but the landscaping at this next to the building, there was something wrong with the sprinkler, and so it had been running, and it created this soft spot in the grass next to the building.
wow.
And he fell 6 stories, but he landed in that soft spot of the grass, and so he was hurt, but it didn't kill him. Broken bones and all the other things. Went to the hospital, of course, and his wife reached out to us and said, when my husband gets up, when he's able to walk, can he come to a program? We said, sure. So long story short, he ends up coming to a program about a month later. Again, proven combat leader, had gone as far as he could go in the military, had done everything, but just completely lost to the point that he tried to kill himself, jumped out of a window. He was standing. I actually went to this program, and I remember him talking about it. At the end of the week, he got up, and he had one of those canes with the like 4 feet on the bottom of it, and so he was still trying to get the ability to walk back, and he was there, and he got up and he leaned on that cane, and he started to tell his story. And he said, I thought that when I left the Marine Corps, I was no longer a leader because that's what I did. I didn't know who I was anymore. And what I've learned this week is that I'm more than the uniform, I'm more than the job, and I can continue to serve. And he did, man. He left the program, and he became kind of the guy that would go to, bars and pull guys who were having a hard time out, and would show up at people's houses and do all that, but just really started to serve, and had that moment where he understood, okay, that's what I did, but that's not who I am.
Right.
And once he got a hold of that, he was able to move forward and has done really, really well. And I love that story because it's a great story, but man, that pictures so many of the folks that attend our programs.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Well, Jeremy, this is amazing. You're doing amazing work. I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation.
Yes.
A thought that you would like to leave our listeners. I know we've got a lot of, ex-military folks that listen to this show, and I'm sure, there's something that they could get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to say. And if I was sitting across from someone, I might say something different. But one of the challenges all of us have is that we lose hope somewhere along the way. And we think that we're the only ones who have struggled or are struggling. And if you don't have hope, then you have no reason to go on. And that's just the truth of it. And so I guess the message I'd like to leave is there's always hope. There's always hope. You may not feel like there is. Don't be betrayed by your feelings. Whether you feel like it or not, there is always hope. Find someone who can help you. Find someone who will listen. Find someone who's gone before you. Reach out to an organization like ours, the Mighty Oaks Foundation. But there is always hope. You just need to find the right place and the right people to help you get there.
I couldn't agree more. That's a powerful message. I know you've written a number of books. You've got a podcast. You got a lot of things that people could find you and hear more about, or hear more of your messaging. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just to go to our organizational website, mightyoaksprograms.org, mightyoaksprograms.org. That's the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And there you can find all the ways to contact me. You can find our podcast there, a link to apply to the program. Our program doesn't cost anything to attend. Doesn't cost anything to get there. We'll take care of all of that if you've served or are serving or you're in the first responder community. And so just apply there. Maybe there are other questions that you have. We've got great resources there. So a lot is found there, mightyoaksprograms.org.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you coming to join us today and have a conversation. And, anytime if there's something that's coming up or something important that's changing or you're adding, I always love to have you back.
Great. Well, thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of our listeners that make the show possible, and we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.